In this week's episode of the Ask the Big podcast, we're going to be talking about which MLS platform is the best. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Ask the Bic podcast, where you'll hear answers to the most frequently asked questions from North Carolina real estate brokers. Submit your questions via email to askthebic@gmail.com. That's askthebic@gmail.com.
Well, welcome to another week of the Ask the Big podcast. My name is Russ Lockamy. I've been a broker in charge here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area for 13 years, since 2011. And this week's question comes from a lot of my local brokers in the Triangle MLS. And that is, which MLS software or platform is the best? See, our local Triangle MLS just recently instituted an MLS of choice program where we can choose from the three top MLS platforms. That's Matrix, that's Flex MLS, or Paragon, which is the one that historically we've been using for many, many years at the Triangle MLS. I've actually had experience with all three of the MLS platforms due to our firm's affiliation with the Fayetteville MLS, which uses Matrix, and the North Carolina Regional MLS, which uses Flex, and of course, Triangle with Paragon. So I come at it with a little bit of experience, but I've also learned a lot in the past few months as we have tried to decide which one we're going to use going forward. Because for my real estate brokers in the Triangle area, a deadline's coming up where we have to pick which one we're going to use going forward or pay extra to continue to have access to all three. So when I'm talking about the different MLS platforms and their pros and cons, I'm really going to be looking at three different criteria, and that's their search capabilities, their client management capabilities, and their ability to perform CMAs. Listing management is also a very important thing with MLSs, but because the Triangle MLS is using Flex as the sole listing management platform, I'm not really going to go into that. In our MLS, Flex is the only choice. If you're going to upload a listing, it's going to be through Flex, but you could still use Paragon or Matrix as your MLS of choice for everything else. So let's dive right in. Matrix, we'll talk about that one first. The pros to Matrix, one of the biggest ones is One Home. One Home is their client portal. It's what they're, you would send to your buyers and maybe sellers, even, if they're also buyers, where they can view the listings that match their criteria on searches that either you set up or that they set up. And I found it to be kind of the most intuitive. It's the easiest one for people to search. It has this like planner tutorial on how to use it, also kind of coaches them a little bit through the buying process. And it has a marketplace as well where buyers can look up, lenders and insurance brokers, and even somebody to fix something on their home, like roofers or things like that. I didn't play around with that too much, so I don't know how well that works necessarily in our area, but it is something that looks like they're trying to push. Another pro for Matrix is their 360 property view. That's like for a flyer, kind of an intuitive flyer view of the property. You can look at one property on one page and see just about everything about that property. And there's different tabs and things where you can look at tax records, you can look at flood maps, really easily see everything about that property on one page. And then finally, the pro for Realist would be their, for Matrix would be their Realist tax records affiliation. Matrix is owned by CoreLogic, which also has a lot of other softwares and things for real estate. One of those being their Realist tax records database. So that one is really, really good. A lot of information, really easy to use. Few cons with Matrix. So collaboration in One Home is a little bit lacking that I found. While it's really good for the client to be able to search and everything, it's kind of harder, I felt, to see what the client's doing, what they're looking at, what they're, um, you know, wanting to look at. Like, there's ways for them to check and say, hey, I like this home. And I'm sure there's different settings where you can, as the agent, get notified of those things, but it wasn't just like really easy. Like, you had to mess with the settings and different things like that. So you also weren't able to as easily as maybe Paragon, I found, kind of see what they were looking at. The searching is also a little bit difficult on the actual Matrix agent side. Just the fields and the search criteria, not as easy to use as what I've been used to, more so in Paragon. Navigation between pages. So like if you're searching for something and then you wanted to jump over and see, your contact management and see what, one of your buyers was looking at this week. Well, you could open up a new tab. So that is something that's nice. You can open up a whole new tab and for the contacts page and for the searches, but your tabs up at the top aren't labeled. So they all just say like Matrix. So it's kind of clunky in that regard as well. And then finally, CMA is pretty complicated. None of the in-house CMA programs on the MLS softwares are great. But CoreLogic and Matrix is probably the worst on the three for me. So pros and cons of those. Let's talk about Paragon. Paragon Pros, the collaboration center. Now this is the client portal for Paragon. It is really good as far as communication back and forth with your buyer. The buyers can, search pretty easily. They can check if they like it, if they're kind of undecided, or if they don't like it, they can request a showing, pick an exact date, and you get an email like right then. So super easy to kind of work with your client during their buying search. Easy CMA is really good, especially if there's good comps. If there's not good comps, it's kind of not worth a whole lot, but if there is good comps, easy CMA is probably the easiest way to do a CMA, in my opinion. There's also a really great CMA summary view with Paragon, which you can open up all the listings that met your search criteria that you put in, and then you can check off like which ones that's how I usually do a CMA on Paragon, and neither Matrix or Flex really have a CMA summary view that you can check or uncheck listings on. In browser tabs, so Paragon does not allow you to open up new tabs, but there's different tabs within the browser. So you can have up to like 3 searches going on at one time. Then you can go over to contact and your searches will still be up and all that kind of stuff. So that's good. And finally, it's familiar. If for my Raleigh agents, for my Triangle MLS agents, it's familiar. It's what we've been using for a while. So there won't be that learning curve. Cons with Paragon. The collaboration center client experience is not quite as good as the one home experience. It's a little bit harder to search. It's not hard, but it's not as easy as I would say like buyers going to Zillow, to be honest. It's got all the text search stuff, and then you can kind of do a map view. I really like the searches where you have a list of listings, you have a map, you can search criteria up at the top, change your criteria filters and everything. That seems to be what, most of the Zillows, Realtor.coms have, but our portals for clients is not as easy on that side. The agent search criteria page, another con for Paragon, needs an update. It's been a while since that's been updated. Again, I just showed you like how I would like to see it. So if anybody at Paragon is watching this, maybe we can get an update for that. We talked about Matrix, talked about Paragon. Now Flex MLS. So as I said before, Flex is going to be what you input listings to. So you're going to have to become somewhat familiar with how Flex looks whether you like it or not. If you're in the Triangle MLS and you're inputting a listing, you're going to have to use Flex. So that is maybe one bump up that you're going to get a little more familiar with it, even if you're not right now. The other pro for that specifically is that there's not going to be a lag. So listings, once they get updated in Flex, they're like supposedly going to be very immediate because it's already been fixed in Flex. For Paragon and Matrix users, it's going to be syndicated to those platforms, just like it's syndicated to agent websites, to Zillow, to Realtor.com. So there might be like a 15-minute lag on those. Flex also has its own app. It's pretty good. I played around with it a little bit, and supposedly it's going to be getting better. You can edit your listings in the app, and you can soon, supposedly, you'll be able to add new listings within the app. Now, I believe you'll be able to do kind of the same thing by signing into the Triangle MLS portal and then going into the listing manager that way, even on your phone. But that I'm not sure about that yet. And then the search criteria page for Flex for agents is kind of like what I like to see. With you got your criteria on one side, you got a map on the other, so you can kind of see where these homes are pulling up. And the cons, it really has the worst portal for clients and the worst kind of client management system, in my opinion. Is just not really good in that regard. And the CMA is complicated, much like the other two, with the exception of the easy CMA with Paragon that's available. So in conclusion, which one is best? I mean, they're all different. They all have pros and things that they do better than the others, and it really boils down to what are you looking for in an MLS platform. If you have a choice, like Triangle MLS agents are having now, what do you use your MLS for? Do you use it for CMAs, or are you using another program like RPR to do your CMAs, which I would strongly suggest you check out, RPR for CMAs if you haven't already. Are you using it for communicating with your clients, sending your client listings, or are you using like your website or a CRM that you have to do that? So if you don't need the CMAs, maybe use Flex because it's what your listing manager is going to be anyway. And if you have a website, but overall, I'm probably going to stick with Paragon. Just as a broker in charge, I may continue to have access to Flex and or Matrix as well, just so I can help my agents when they have an issue with if they chose Matrix or Flex. But if I was choosing for myself, I would choose to stick with Paragon. So I hope this answers your question. As we sign off, I just want to remind you guys that life is short, so take action, but don't take it too seriously. This is Russ Lockamy with the Ask the Bic podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Ask the Bic podcast. To have your question answered on a future episode, email us at askthebic@gmail.com. That's askthebic@gmail.com.